Most people spend years working hard for money, but somehow still feel financially stuck. And the truth is, it's usually not because they're lazy. It's because nobody ever taught them how money actually works. School teaches people how to work for money, but rarely teaches them how to manage it, grow it, or protect it. And over time, small financial mistakes become expensive habits, bad debt, poor decisions, emotional investing, living without a plan, and before people realize, years have passed. That's why in this video, we're going through 10 money rules that can completely change the way you think about money, investing, and long-term wealth. Not complicated financial theories, just real principles that have helped ordinary people build better financial lives over time. Because understanding money is not about becoming obsessed with getting rich, it's about creating freedom, reducing stress, and building a future with more choices and less financial pressure. So, let's get into it. 10 money rules that most people learn too late. Rule 1. Money is not the goal, it's the result. A lot of people say, I can't wait to become rich so I can stop working. But interestingly, the people who achieve real financial freedom are usually the ones who genuinely enjoy what they do. Because people who build long-term wealth rarely do it with money as their only objective. In many cases, wealth becomes the result of creating value, staying consistent, and doing meaningful work over a long period of time. Money itself is not the destination, it's a tool. As Margaret Thatcher once said, no one would remember the Good Samaritan if he'd only had good intentions. He had money as well. And the point is simple. Money creates opportunities. It can buy security, better education, better healthcare, experiences for your family, and more freedom over your life. Because at the end of the day, money stays here. You leave. That's why money should never be the ultimate goal. It should be the result of building value, discipline, and purpose over time. Rule 2. The Warren Buffett rule. Never lose money. Of course, it's impossible to never lose money, but the concept is extremely important. If you invest £100 and lose 50% of it, now you only have £50 left. And if your money goes back to £100, that means it had to grow 100%. The more money you lose, the harder it becomes to recover. Mathematically speaking, it's better to lose less money during crises than simply follow the market during the highs. That's why Warren Buffett has 2 important rules. The first rule is never lose money, and the second rule is never forget the first rule. Some people expose themselves to the risk of total ruin. They take all their money and put it into risky financial schemes or very risky assets like crypto, thinking, what if I make money quickly and get out before everything collapses? But that mindset rarely ends well. Never lose money. And that's why financial education matters. The more you understand money, the more you understand investing, the lower the chances of doing something reckless with your finances. That's why diversification is so important. Don't put everything in one place. Don't expose yourself to the risk of total loss. Because investing is a long-term game. It's a game for life, not a game that ends tomorrow. You might become rich quickly by building a successful business, but building long-term wealth requires smart investing, patience, and protecting yourself from unnecessary losses. Rule 3. Don't let greed, fear, or impatience control your money. There's a famous example of this during the dot-com bubble back in the late 1990s. At the time, the internet was starting to explode, and suddenly every company connected to technology looked like the future. It didn't matter if the company was profitable. It didn't matter if the business even made sense. As long as it had .com attached to its name, people were buying. Stock prices were rising every single day. 10%, 20%, sometimes even more. And after a while, something dangerous started happening. People stopped investing logically and started investing emotionally. Because everywhere they looked, someone was getting rich. Friends were talking about stocks. News channels were talking about stocks. Ordinary people who knew nothing about investing suddenly believed they had discovered an easy path to wealth. And that's what greed does. It makes people believe the rise will never end. At first, many people were cautious, but after seeing others make huge amounts of money, they started thinking, what if I'm missing the opportunity of a lifetime? And that fear, the fear of missing out, pulled millions of people into the market. People invested savings, retirement money, sometimes even borrowed money. Not because they understood what they were buying, but because everyone else seemed to be making money. And for a while it looked like they were right, until reality arrived. In the year 2000, the bubble collapsed. Many of those companies disappeared completely, and trillions of dollars were wiped out from the market. People who thought they were building wealth overnight watched years of savings disappear in months. And the lesson was brutal. Greed makes people ignore risk. Fear makes people follow crowds. And impatience makes people chase fast money instead of long-term wealth. Because real investing was never supposed to feel like gambling. And history keeps teaching the same lesson over and over again. When everybody believes getting rich is easy, that's usually when the danger is highest. There is no such thing as instant success. Anything that rises overnight can disappear overnight too. Rule 4. Income, savings equals expenses. Pay yourself first. Most people grow up learning the same financial formula. Income minus expenses equals savings. In other words, you earn money, you pay your bills, you spend what you need, and if there's anything left at the end of the month, you save it. But the problem is, for most people, there's never anything left. And that's why the real formula should be income minus savings equals expenses. Pay yourself first. Because every month, you already pay everyone else first. You pay electricity bills, phone bills, rent, subscriptions, transport, debt. But very few people pay their future selves first, and that's where financial progress starts to change. Because saving and investing should not be treated like optional money left over at the end of the month. It should be treated like one of your most important bills. Your financial freedom account, your investment account, your retirement account. Because if you don't build those consistently, nobody else will build them for you. And that's why one of the most important money habits is this. Don't invest what's left after spending. Spend what's left after investing. Rule 5. If you don't have money, don't spend money. And that sounds obvious until you look at how most people actually live. People finance cars they can't afford, book holidays using debt, split phones, clothes, watches, and lifestyles into monthly payments, all to experience a life they haven't earned yet. And over time, those small decisions become financial pressure. Because every time you borrow money to buy things you can't truly afford, you sacrifice part of your future income. You start working for payments instead of building wealth. Dave Ramsey once said, "We buy things we don't need with money we don't have to impress people we don't like." And honestly, that describes modern consumer culture perfectly. People want the appearance of wealth before building actual wealth. But real financial freedom usually looks boring at the beginning. It looks like discipline, patience, saying no, living below your means. That's why Morgan Housel, author of The Psychology of Money, says, "The highest form of wealth is the ability to wake up every morning and say, 'I can do whatever I want today.' And you don't get that freedom by financing a lifestyle you can't sustain. You get it by creating margin between what you earn and what you spend. Because debt doesn't only cost money, it costs flexibility, it costs peace of mind, And sometimes it costs years of your future. The problem is that most people want to enjoy the reward first and deal with the consequences later. But wealth is usually built in the opposite order. First comes sacrifice, then comes freedom. First comes discipline, then comes options. That's why this rule matters so much. If you don't have the money, don't spend the money. Because every financial decision you make today is shaping the life you'll be forced to live tomorrow. Rule 6. The law of planting and harvesting. And this principle applies to almost every area of life, especially money. Because if you plant, eventually you can harvest. But if you plant nothing, you harvest nothing. And the truth is, wealth works exactly the same way. Nobody wakes up financially free overnight. Financial freedom is usually the result of years of planting, investing, learning, working, building, improving, and making smart decisions consistently over time. The problem is that most people want the harvest without the planting. They want results before sacrifice, success before discipline, freedom before responsibility. But life rarely works that way. Even the Bible teaches this principle. Galatians chapter 6 verse 7 says, "A man reaps what he sows." And that's powerful because it applies directly to money. If someone constantly spends everything they earn, they eventually harvest stress. If someone avoids learning about money, they eventually harvest financial confusion. But if someone plants discipline, patience, consistency, and long-term thinking, over time they usually harvest stability, opportunities, and freedom. Because every financial decision is like planting a seed. Some seeds grow into debt, others grow into wealth. And the difficult part is that planting often feels slow. At first, it looks like nothing is happening, but that's how compounding works. That's how investing works. That's how building a better life works. You plant first, you wait, you stay consistent, and eventually the results begin to appear. That's why people who build wealth successfully usually understand one thing. Small actions repeated consistently over many years can completely change someone's future. Because in the end, everyone harvests what they plant. And those who plant absolutely nothing harvest absolutely nothing. Rule 7. Start now. Because when it comes to investing, time matters more than most people realize. Most people massively underestimate how powerful time really is. Imagine two friends leaving school at the same age. One of them starts investing early. Nothing huge, just small amounts consistently. Sometimes £50, sometimes £100, whatever he can afford. Not because he's rich, but because he understands that time matters. The other friend keeps delaying it. He tells himself, "I'll start when I earn more. I'll start when life settles down. I'll start later." And honestly, that's what most people do. Years go by. One person keeps building slowly. The other keeps postponing. And eventually, something interesting happens. The person who started early doesn't necessarily become rich because he invested more money. He becomes wealthier because he gave his money more time to grow. That's the real power of compound interest. Not huge amounts, not quick wins. Time. Because money invested early has something that money invested later can never recover. Years. And the difficult part is that waiting always feels harmless in the moment. 1 year doesn't feel important, neither does the next one. But over decades, those years become incredibly expensive. Warren Buffett once said, "The stock market is a device for transferring money from the impatient to the patient." And that's exactly how wealth is built. Not through speed, not through hype, but through consistency and time. That's why one of the biggest regrets people have financially is this: I wish I had started earlier. Because the truth is, the perfect moment rarely comes. You don't need to start with thousands. You just need to start. because small investments made consistently over long periods of time can completely change someone's future. Rule 8. Focus on contributions. One of the biggest mistakes people make is believing they need a large amount of money to start investing, so they wait. They tell themselves, "I'll start when I earn more. I'll invest later." But wealth is rarely built through one big investment. It's usually built through small contributions made consistently over many years. Because investing is not about being perfect, it's about building the habit. Even small amounts invested regularly can become powerful over time through consistency and compound growth. That's why discipline matters more than intensity. A disciplined person investing consistently for years will usually outperform someone constantly waiting for the perfect moment. Focus less on trying to get rich quickly and focus more on consistently building your future. Rule 9. Making money is not about predicting the future. People try to predict the future like it's a crystal ball. But even the greatest investors in history admit that predicting the future is nearly impossible. The goal is not to predict the future perfectly. The goal is to be prepared for whatever future arrives. People spend too much time trying to predict what the market will do next. But successful investors usually focus on something different: preparation. Because nobody can consistently predict the future, but you can build a strategy strong enough to survive different outcomes. That's why diversification matters. Rule 10. Buy assets. Most people spend their money buying liabilities, things that look good but take money out of their pocket every single month. Cars with large monthly payments, expensive lifestyles, things bought to impress other people. But wealthy people usually think differently. Instead of spending everything they earn, they use part of their money to buy assets, things that can grow in value, generate income, or produce more money over time. Because real wealth is not built by looking rich. It's built by owning things that continue paying you long after you bought them. And over time, those assets begin to compound. One investment creates another. One stream of income creates another. And slowly, money starts working for you, instead of you constantly working for money. That's one of the biggest mindset shifts in finance. Poor people spend first. Wealthy people build first. If you've watched this video until the end, I'm sure at least one of these rules made you think differently about money. And honestly, that one shift in mindset could completely change someone's financial future. So, share this video with someone who needs to hear it. Send it to your friends, your family group chat, anyone who could benefit from hearing these lessons. Please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. Don't forget to hit the notification bell so you never miss upcoming videos. And I'll see you in the next video. Thanks for watching.